Thing I didn't hear you mention, which I know will be an important issue, is CO2 emissions. So I don't know if you have any information on that.
How much pollution does it create?
Well, just
CO2. CO2 what?
You know what he's talking about is everybody's worried about carbon footprints and all that sort of stuff. First of all, besides the fact I think all that stuff's nonsense, because let's face it, we need more CO2 in the atmosphere, not less, because our plants and our crops are suffering for lack of it. There's not enough. And I heard one time that, I believe this to be true, that right now is about 380 to 400 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Well, greenhouses bump that up to over 1,000 to get better yield out of their crops. And then in the average office, it's about 500 to 600. And nobody complains about, there's no problems with that. In Apollo, if you watch the movie Apollo 13, their problem was the carbon dioxide levels were going to hit 4,500 parts per million. And that's when carbon dioxide poisoning becomes a problem. We're only at 400. Now, they say that if we want to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, plants begin to really suffer at 220 parts, and they die at 180. So how good at this do you want to get? And what guarantee is it that once you start the process and get it going, how can you stop it? Well, you could light some forest fires or invite a volcano. That would do it. But the point I'm making is, from a public, I think the answer to your question is education, and let people just start to try to chip back at some of this nonsense about what carbon dioxide gas really is. It's plant food. It's not pollution. I know it's a real uphill battle because you've got the likes of David Suzuki and Al Gore, and as much as we mock and scoff at them, or at least I do, they've got a lot of clout out there. A lot of people believe in what they tell them. So you've got a big battle. But from a public relations point of view, basically, I just wouldn't go there unless specifically asked, and then I'd give a similar answer. Like, you just have to realize that when you look at our overall greenhouse gas emissions, 97% of them are water vapor. So what difference does this little plant going to make? And the economic benefits far outweigh. Even if you talk about greenhouse gas emissions, what about taking all the trucks off the road? That would far offset anything that might be lost through the plant itself. There's all kinds of different ways you can slice that pie. So I'm not worried about that kind of stuff. My first inclination is to educate people that just because some guy in a white lab coat tells you doesn't mean it's automatically true. They have agendas just like we do. So it's about time that we began to wake up and understand what that is. But if you want to go the green route and say, well, every truck you take off the road, how much diesel fuel do you save a year? How much of that carbon emission do you not have to account for? So you can be on both sides, legitimately be on both sides of that fence, and make the case.
Is there a transformation? Is there a transformation in atmosphere, because most cars and trucks, they spew out carbon monoxide, not dioxide.
Well, they do put out some carbon dioxide too.
Yeah,
but carbon monoxide is a pollutant.
So that one gets transformed into dioxide in the atmosphere?
No, it's a different gas.
And does the tree eat the stuff?
No.
So that is the pollution.
Yeah, carbon monoxide is a pollutant.
Yeah.
Carbon dioxide is plant food.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I'm not asking because I'm concerned. I'm just sort of
playing devil's advocate.
Because you're obviously practicing your presentation here, and you're doing a great job. So one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that Canada is a net sink for carbon dioxide. We're one of the few countries, we eat carbon dioxide. We love carbon dioxide. That's how the trees grow. And
that's right.
So it may very well be that it's beneficial to, like, this is plant food, like you say. So it could be a positive for our economy to have a process that is CO2 intensive. Like, it's twisting it around the same as you were trying to do, but it's just something that a lot of people don't know. The World Wildlife Foundation has a list. I mean, Canada, no, but one of the good things they do is they say that Canada is a net consumer of CO2.
Well, without getting off into the weeds too much, the bottom line is that unless specifically asked about that, I wouldn't even mention it.
it's obvious. It'll come up for sure.
It'll come up.
Oh yeah.
It's obvious.
Because what Rob is
I'd rather
getting to,
deflect it than
you know, what Rob is getting to is, you know, this is the separation between, or the joining or the separation, whichever way you look at it, between science and some of the nonsense that is out there.
Well,
When you say Suzuki and Al Gore, then I think on that side you're talking about some of the nonsense.
yeah.
And there is a following behind it, and there is that type of group. But now you get into the real science of it, which is I think what Rob is asking. And there's somewhere there has to be a balance, and yes, those questions have to be answered.
Well, if in that case, then you just go with the okay, for every you know, every ton of garbage we haul in one truck that used to take 2, you know, we're cutting our greenhouse gas emissions just by taking those trucks off the road.
It's all marketing.
Absolutely,
No, this is all
it is.
marketing.
What comes out of coal power plant, the main pollution out of the
Out of
chimney?
a coal-fired power
Yeah,
plant, a
yeah.
modern coal-fired
Yeah,
power plant,
It's not CO2.
almost nothing. But that's
The
not going to cut
modern
it.
one. The modern one.
Yeah, that's why I asked about. I said
I'm talking the
specific-
ones they're using in China right now that
Oh.
really.
anything you can think of. They have sulfur. They have, because let's face it, this is what makes this whole thing about, you know, greenhouse gas emissions a mockery in the first place. China's opening a new coal-fired power plant a week.
Mhm.
They do not care about. Look, they had to shut the city of Beijing down and all the plants around it
For the Olympics.
for the Olympics, just so people could breathe.
The closure of coal-fired plants is what's caused your hydro rates to go up as much as they have, which you talk about all the time. You know, that's one of your big issues.
Well,
you know,
and the loss of industry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that too.
that's a,
And they've
closing
all-
those coal-fired plants is a very, very, very key contributor to high hydro rates.
We didn't need the coal fired plants. We
What
have
Nick
enough nuclear
what
and
Nick is talking
hydro to
about.
cover.
Well, what I'm saying, as I think where Dave is going, is that, okay, if you want to close the coal-fired power plants, all right, fine. I'm not against the innovation and
But don't put windmills and solar.
yeah, that's the wrong way to go.
But coal is a fuel, okay? Coal is a fuel that fuel those plants to turn that into electricity. What Nick is talking about is, and I'll tell you what the term is, it's RDF. You know this one? It's refuse-derived fuels.
Yes.
That's what he's talking about. So he's saying, look, we're going to do exactly what we did with coal, that you
Only with
guys all
garbage.
shut down, that
Well,
governments have shut down.
If
But
you
now we're
think about it,
using
if you bury
refuse.
it in the ground, it's still going to decompose and release
No,
all
it
the same
doesn't.
stuff
Yeah.
anyway.
No, it
so it's
doesn't.
just a matter of
No, it
What's
doesn't decompose in the ground. I'll explain that one too, because once it's in there, it's entombed. It's like mummies.
It's
in Egypt. And it's there's no
Yeah, there's no
oxygen.
light. There's no
Yeah,
oxygen,
there's
no
no
light.
oxygen.
Wrong term.
So you need all those factors. Anaerobic is the key. And
Anaerobic.
no
It
air.
means no atmosphere, no
no
air.
air. No air.
You can
So-
you can go into landfills from the 1950s and still pull out stakes and the papers that were reading.
So
those
you
days.
have a government who has, because of a theory or to marketing again to satisfy that group and to say we're doing this environmentally friendly, we're going to shut down those nasty coal. But coal is a fuel, so we're going to shut down the coal. We're not going to use coal to produce electricity. Well, Nick is saying, okay, fine, there's no coal out there, but instead of burying the garbage, let's take the garbage out and use that. And now refuse-derived fuel, coal-derived fuel.
But if we use your technology to do the garbage, if we did it with coal,
Well, it's the same.
But that's
It's the same thing,
Coal,
yeah, of course.
coal and garbage
They've
are the
been
resources.
using liquid,
Coal and garbage
liquefied
are
or
resources.
powdered coal for years. This, you know, by grinding it up and burning it in a vortex.
Look at garbage as coal.
That's what, when George Bush
Am I
talked
right?
about clean coal, yes.
Look at garbage as a cord of wood.
Yeah,
That's
because,
what it is.
look, energy comes in a whole bunch of different forms, but it's all energy, right? Like 2 pounds of wood will give you so many BTUs. A pound of gasoline will give you so many BTUs. It all boils down to BTUs. And how you get that doesn't matter from the power point of view. Like, all I want is the BTUs to boil the water, turn the turbine to turn the generator, okay, or the alternator. And it doesn't matter whether it comes from plastic, wood, coal, natural gas, the sun, the wind,
Oil.
doesn't matter. Well, the sun and wind doesn't work, but oil, those kind of things, it's heat. Heat is what matters. And the more heat you produce out of a fuel, the more efficient it is. So, some of the most efficient stuff we have is right here. So let's use it like that. But another aspect I want to just mention when we're talking about cost think about this. Let's say it cost us 10 cents a kilowatt hour to buy it from an energy from waste plant. And everybody goes, well, wait a minute, we're already paying almost 12, you know, by the time you get it out to people and so on. And
16.
Okay, well, whatever it is. But when you calculate in the savings, through the savings to the municipalities, because they don't have to run energy, they don't have to run these multifaceted.
They didn't have to bury it.
They don't have to run.
They don't have
to run the road. They don't have to run the trucks.
They didn't have to source an area that's going to piss off all kinds of people all around it within 50 miles to put in all.
Because you could do this on 5 acres. You don't need huge.
And how much is acres is the one
it's
that
about 100, I think.
It's 100 acres.
100 acres in Colorado Springs.
So to get back to your point about how, you know, what about the carbon emissions? I think the simplest way to handle that is to take this tactic where you say, okay, you know, we're pulling trucks off the road to burn diesel fuel. We all know how nasty diesel fuel is, so we don't want to do that. We don't want to be changing oil because we know what that's like. All that stuff. You talk about the savings, you can now take and make better use out of your recyclables than what we've been using, how we've been doing it before.
And
yeah, go
I was curious, has there been any research done around the feasibility of scaling down the technology even to the residential level, where like a home produces a lot of plastic?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's an interesting question.
So
Okay,
the home could have the home incinerator.
There is something called diminishing returns.
Right.
And what happens is once you get under 25 tons a day, the cost for producing one of these, because that's one of the first things I thought of too. I got 8 kids. So we produce, a person in North America makes about 3 pounds of garbage a day. Well, let's see, that gives us, there was about 13 people in my house at the time when I asked this question, times 3, okay, that's not too bad. So if you save that up, can you flash this up and burn it so we don't have to go to the dump? And Jeff basically said the cost of producing those plants on that small scale wouldn't be worth it. You'd have to have the minimum of 25 tons a day to make it anywhere near economically feasible.
Good break-even point.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Oh, but you can still have a burn pit in your backyard,
like I do.
but not converting it to energy.
Yeah.
Oh, I convert it to energy. I just can't use the energy I convert it to.
That's right. Well, to heat and stuff like that.
Yeah, I found that out yesterday when I was burning it yesterday. I had a whole pile of wood. I put in a place I'd been burning for 2-3 days before that, and I thought that fire was up. Like that, all the ashes were dead and everything. I put all that sopping wet wood that had been laying outside for 2 years on the bottom. I quit about 4 o'clock. I had a nice big pile, probably 4 feet high by 5 or 6 feet wide. Went in the house and came out at 6 o'clock to go uptown. That pile had been on fire for an hour.
Wow.
Blew my mind. Scared the crap out of me, to tell you the truth. I mean, it wasn't in any danger. I had taken all the safety precautions and all that. I had the garden hose handy, but still, when you don't set a fire, but you come out and find one, that does get your attention.
Yes.
So, you've been begging to ask a question.
Yeah, so theoretically, I forget his name, Jeff White?
Yep.
Okay, so if, say, all of us around the table wanted to build a plant like this tomorrow in Ontario, what roadblocks are there to that?
60%.
Yeah, it is.
We have to recycle 60%.
What day is it today?
Red tape.
This actually goes back to Bob Ray.
Okay.
Because before Bob Ray took over, the Ministry of Environment was staffed by actual, real scientists and engineers.
Yeah.
People who cared about their jobs and were interested in innovation. And they were working on incineration. And because Bob Ray and his greenies, because remember, incineration in the 1970s was a smokestack. Okay? Just a big box at the bottom of the smokestack. You put it in, burn it, the smoke came out the top, and who cared? You know, we had a very 1940s, 50s attitude about what we were doing in the 70s. And Bob Ray said, that's it, no more incineration, no more study, no nothing. And he put that on the shelf. The other thing was economics, because in those days, garbage was $19 a ton to handle, not $100. So the economics weren't in play to make it feasible. So even though Jeff had built 2 of these things, one in London, one in Florida, and tested them at the U.S. Marine Hospital in Florida and one at the London University campus of the University of Western Ontario, I think, their medical campus, and had tested these things there. They were 2 25-ton-a-day units. For 2 years, he'd run the test, done all the air, you know, the MOE inspections and all that. Bob Ray killed it. He absolutely wiped it off the map for 10 years. 10 or 15 years, there was no research in Ontario at all. That's why Europe got so far ahead of us. And we're paying for that mistake even now. Because what we now find is that the rules, what we have for people who are within the bureaucracy in Queen's Park are paper pushers. They're not engineers or scientists anymore. They're people who only want to keep their butts covered, and they want to do what they did yesterday because they know that's safe. So unless you can find a way to convince them that what you're doing will be as safe as what they're doing, and it's like water treatment. Why do we dilute our water and then dump it into the river course we just took it from? When you're talking about wastewater treatment. Okay, dilution is not pollution is the old attitude. That's absolute nonsense. That's why the Ottawa River needs to be cleaned up, right? Because everybody, pardon my language, but they're pouring their crap into the river. And every time it rains here, we dump more raw sewage in the river. So why are we doing it? There are other technologies out there, land application, things like that, snow fluent and all that kind of thing. All that's there to make sure that we don't dump any of that stuff into our source of drinking water. Because let's face it, unless you're all the way up in Temiskaming somewhere, somebody in the river is peeing in the river upstream of you. And you're going to take that out and drink it. Now, they treat it and all that, but you get the point.
Yeah.
So the way to do that is not to have fancy ways of dumping the water back in the river, but don't dump that water back in the river at all. Let the land do what it's always done. Filter the water, and it'll go into the groundwater and then back into the river that way. So there's all kinds of barriers. It makes it very difficult. You have pilot projects you have to run. There's certain